And I'm opening the hearing on House Bill 1075. And
Oh, yes.
Representative Grote will be introducing the bill.
I'll be right back.
It's going to be a doozy. Thank you, Representative Schmidt.
Hi, everyone. I'm Representative Jaci Grote, representing Rockingham 24, the towns of Greenland and Rye. And I'm here to introduce Representative Horrigan's bill, which is House Bill 1075, enact enabling the abolishing of daylight savings time. I believe you all have his written testimony. And are there any other speakers who have signed up?
There are 5 of them.
Okay, great. So I will yield to the other speakers.
All right, thank you. Judy Johnson?
Good afternoon, and thank you for taking my testimony. For several years, you might have remembered a gentleman by the name of Mr. Burnham. He lived on Route 13 in Dunbarton, who made national headlines because he refused to recognize daylight savings time, because he said, the cows don't understand it, my crops don't understand it, and neither does my body. I go by the sun. I know we've all experienced waking up that day after the clocks are changed, tired and exhausted, and wondering how we're going to make it through the day. And it usually takes us about a week to get adjusted. As a mom, getting our kids ready during that time is also very difficult because we have to wake them up an hour earlier than usual. It's been very difficult. And as a high school teacher for 26 years, I can tell you how much it is a detriment to students. As a teacher of juniors and seniors in high school who are tired, they don't get enough sleep to begin with, daylight savings time does hurt their performance in class. And it usually, again, takes about a week, 2 weeks to get adjusted. I think the sun should be the guide for our bodies. It's the natural way that our bodies react. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never had to use an alarm clock because my body knows what time it is. So I am in support of House Bill 1075 and hope you are too. Thank you for taking my testimony.
Thank you.
Any questions?
All right, very good. Scott Spradling?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Scott Spradling. I'm representing the New Hampshire Association of Broadcasters. This is a repeat performance of sorts. I think we've had this conversation around this idea in multiple sessions before. And let me make it very clear that the previous speaker's message absolutely resonates with the men and women who work in radio and television every single day. And if it was a matter of our clock hours and our schedules being set by the sun and by the cows, we'd be in great shape. But I think it's really important to understand the reason why we oppose this bill is because it will create some very serious financial and scheduling impacts on us. Radio and TV works in the clock business. Many of our members have radio stations that are in more than one state. The way this bill and the follow-up bill are structured, it bifurcates all of New England and sets us apart from the rest of the region and creates some very real, dramatic, and absolutely measurable fiscal impacts. Great Eastern Radio operates along the Connecticut Valley in Claremont, in Lebanon, up and down the western part of our great state. They also have stations in Vermont. There is a great deal of simulcasting in New England radio stations. And before anyone argues, well, we have already time zones around the country, you are absolutely right. And they were established before broadcast radio got started. So our radio stations came together after we already had established time zones, not before. This type of an approach, this type of a bill, will do immediate damage to an industry that is already working very, very hard as we watch technological changes happen around our country. I would respectfully ask that you take a different approach to something like this. It is admittedly the harder way to do it, but I would hope that the sponsor of this bill and the next bill who have keep offering this proposal would start collaborating with our federal delegation and have this conversation with a 50-state strategy and not pick a handful of states around us. I think it's also important to note that at least one of the bills that you're hearing talks about linking to Maine and Massachusetts. It is our understanding, because the NHAB has to track this with other broadcasters in other states, that these conversations are not happening elsewhere, so you're wasting your time. So I would please ask that you respect the fact that a decision like this would have a very measurable negative effect on the broadcasters. Please don't mess with the clock radio. Let's go have this conversation in Washington where it belongs. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Are there questions? Representative Schmidt and the man deputy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Representative.
So we've had bills in the past, as you know. It's an eternal, timeless, shall we say,
Yes, sir.
timeless subject. But in the past, some of the bills have incorporated a provision which says we really should be in a different time zone.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's
But
the
we
next
will
bill,
not.
Representative Schmidt. This one only says get rid of.
Just get rid of.
switching.
I understand, but I'm speaking to his point. We would only change ours if they change theirs, because New Hampshire is clearly linked extremely closely to Massachusetts and also to Maine, but much more to Massachusetts. We ain't going anywhere without Massachusetts moving there too. So would the bill be any less objectionable if Massachusetts changed to a time zone that would be better as far as the sun is concerned, as the previous witness was testifying?
Sure. And I certainly don't dispute what the previous witness said and the sort of the science behind the sunlight. Completely understand that. But it creates problems for our broadcasters because we have business relationships not just with Massachusetts and with Maine, but also with Vermont and even Eastern New York. So from the broadcaster's perspective, it just creates real clock hour fiscal management problems, because we can have, if you change the hour schedule, but you maintain your overall primary schedule that you have for radio stations, you can have real problems, especially with nighttime broadcasting. There are decency and indecency laws that start with 10 p.m. radio broadcast. You can have, as you can imagine, if a couple of states in New England are at 9 o'clock and a couple of states in New England are at 10 o'clock and you've got simulcasting, you're creating some real programming challenges for local radio.
Okay.
Thank you very
Man
much.
deputy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question.
Sure.
If you totally abolished daylight saving time or across the country, then you would be okay with that?
No problem.
Thank you.
Else? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Tom Alciere.
I need it. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Eastern Standard Time is the mean solar time, the 75-degree meridian west of the Greenwich Meridian. Daylight saving time is the same as Atlantic Standard Time, which is the mean solar time of the 60 degrees west of Greenwich. Now, what does it mean when you say mean solar time? Learn something new every day. The Earth rotates in 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds. Meanwhile, she is moving on her orbit. So when she goes to face the sun again, the same hemisphere, it takes a few more minutes to face the sun from a new position on her orbit. The exact amount varies during the year because the orbit is not a circle, it's an ellipse. So sometimes it takes a little more than 24 hours for the same hemisphere to face the sun again, for the sun to transit the meridian. So sometimes a solar day is more than 24 hours, sometimes it's a few seconds less, and these add up during the months. So the average day, however, is 24 hours. What do we mean by mean solar time? Well, if the sun transits your meridian, on average, 12 hours after your clock strikes midnight, then your clock is on average solar time. The average of 12 hours after midnight, that's when the sun should be crossing the meridian on mean solar time. As I said, Atlantic time is the mean solar time for 60 degrees west, and Eastern Standard Time is the mean solar time for 75 degrees west, and the Legislative Office building in which we are sitting is 71.54 degrees west, a lot closer to 75 than to 60. So it makes sense for New Hampshire to be in the standard time zone and not the Atlantic time zone. I want to debunk the myth here with these maps, the myth that New Hampshire belongs in the Atlantic time zone. You can see in the lower map there, the map of the time zone, it kind of looks like, gee, it's so far east, maybe it belongs in the Atlantic time zone. But no, it's because the western boundary is so far west that it just kind of creates that illusion in a lot of people's minds. Take a look at Michigan. Northern Michigan is most of it is on Eastern time. The boundary actually belongs 82.5 degrees west, and most of Michigan belongs in Central time. So just as Maine would be split by a time zone line at 67.5, Washington County, Maine would be split, and the line would go through western New Brunswick. Most of New England, almost all of New England belongs on Eastern time, and why not just draw the line so that all of Michigan would be in the Central time zone? People are led to think that New Hampshire is so far east that it belongs in Atlantic time because of the illusion, because Michigan is mostly on Eastern time. So why don't they just draw the boundary lines halfway between the meridians? Oh, sure. Let's see now, 75 degrees west, 90 degrees west, halfway between is 82.5 degrees west, right smack dab through the city of Tampa, Florida. And it gets better. 90 degrees west, 105 degrees west. Let's go halfway in between, 97.5 degrees west, right smack through the middle of the heart of downtown Oklahoma City, missing the state capitol building by a couple of blocks. Imagine having a time zone boundary through Concord, missing the State House by a couple of blocks. Lots of fun. So it makes sense to adjust the boundaries a little bit to follow county lines and international borders for convenience. But that would be a difference between maybe 28 minutes slow or 32 minutes fast. But here we have a situation where we have a choice between being 13 minutes and 51 seconds slow, behind local mean solar time of this building, or 46 minutes and 9 seconds fast by being on daylight saving time. So for this reason, while we should discontinue the changing of clocks, we also need to select Eastern Standard Time as the standard and not permanent daylight saving time, which, by the way, is singular, contrary to what some people testifying here today have done. It's not daylight savings time, it's daylight saving time. Take a look at the text of the bill there. Okay, so as Benjamin Franklin said, facts are stubborn. John Adams, said, facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passions, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence.
Thank you. Karin Johnson. increase.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, committee. I am here in support of HB 1075 and oppose HB 1679 for permanent daylight savings time. My name is Dr. Karin Johnson. I'm a sleep physician, a neurologist. I actually live in Springfield, Massachusetts, but I have family in New Hampshire. My family owns land in New Hampshire. I come up here for skiing and hiking and recreation. And so I really strongly urge you to support permanent standard time and H 1075 for three main reasons. Permanent standard time, as we just heard, is the more naturally aligned time, and more naturally aligned sun time is best for our sleep, our circadian rhythms, which stay aligned with the sun no matter what time we set on our watches and our phones. And sleep, circadian rhythms is really the pillar of not only physical health, but mental health, as well as our cognitive function, which as a neurologist, I think is of great importance. As we heard before, when we're on the wrong time, it affects our ability to get up, our ability to get our kids to school, our ability for our kids to do well in school, and that affects our families, it affects our children. Adolescents have a natural delay in their rhythms, so they actually have the highest impact from being on daylight savings time, leading to the most impacts. And it's also bad for our overall workforce. Most jobs start before 8 a.m., and those people are more likely to lose sleep. Even though a lot of people, if you ask them, how do you want to end time change? Most people, about 60 to 70% of Americans say we hate the clock change. We want to end it. And people aren't really sure of which way to go. A lot of people default to daylight savings time because they think of summer and they think daylight savings time will bring endless summer. Daylight savings time does not add any hours to the day. It just shifts the timing of that sun later. And the maps I showed you show what effect it has on the mornings. So in New Hampshire, there would be 60 to 70 days with the sun rising after 8 a.m. It would be as late as about 8:20 in the morning in New Hampshire. Those dark mornings, again, make it harder to get up, to get going. There's more icy roads to drive on. There's kids standing at their bus stops. Back in 1974, the last time we tried permanent daylight savings time, one of the reasons it was so unpopular were kids dying at their bus stops. And again, you're basically telling people, get up, go to work an hour earlier than your body is ready. In terms of some of the health impacts, a lot of people think the only problem is when we make that switch. And there are more heart attacks, more strokes, more car accidents that happen, especially in the spring after we go to daylight savings time. But what a lot of people don't realize is our bodies don't adjust within a week or two. Our bodies stay aligned to the natural sun time. And so that misalignment causes us to lose sleep throughout the whole period of daylight savings time. Places that have later sunrises and sunsets have higher rates of obesity, higher rates of cancer, have higher rates of fatal car crashes, higher rates of seasonal depression, higher rates of suicide. These have been proven with studies that have separated the effect of what is sort of the length of the day. So some of these things get better in summer. So you think, oh, daylight savings time must be better. But when you separate that length of the day effect from the time we set our clock effect, we know that it's those later clock times that are causing that circadian disruption and causing these worse outcomes. I want to talk about what it was mentioned with the radios. We do think that a national option would be best. So permanent standard time is already federally pre-approved. So any state can just say, we want to go on standard time, and it can happen immediately. And that is why, for the most part, we do endorse packed bills to avoid the economic and radio and other issues that we heard before. We have a growing number of states introducing standard time bills. Some are immediate, but for example, Massachusetts is saying we would only go forward if New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and who am I forgetting? And Rhode Island would adopt it too. Connecticut's bill is saying, you know, we will only do it if Massachusetts and New York will only do it. So you get these ever increasing pacts where it won't actually happen unless, again, a big enough region goes forward, or more importantly, we hope that it just signals the federal government to go forward. We really need to have these state bills pass to show the federal government that there's interest in standard time, because the assumption right now, because some daylight savings time bills have passed before we got out there saying the harms of this, that is what people want. We need to tell people in the federal government that no, we are interested in having standard time. So if you want to expand the states that are listed on this bill, I think that could be reasonable if you want to make sure that Vermont's in there and other ones. But just the way the other states are having with their bills, it will be this sort of ever-growing pact. Overall, again, the reason we made time zones was to align economic interests, trains going across, and it was called standard time because the sun was overhead at noon at the meridian at the midpoint of the time zone. This is the more natural time. Daylight savings time was brought in first in World War II and then in 1974 as a way to try to get people to go to work an hour earlier and to save energy. They never found that they saved energy. And in fact, more recent studies, Indiana, that used to be mostly on standard time, found that when they ended standard time, there was actually a 1% increase in energy costs related to increased heating and cooling bills. So a lot of the more recent data shows that daylight savings time is actually causes an increase in energy. Other data out of Indiana showed that students do worse on standardized tests when they were in even partial daylight savings time than when they were on standard time. So the choice of time is really important, affects all our lives. We want to end the time change, but we need to do it the right way with permanent standard time. I'm here on behalf of the Coalition of Permanent Standard Time, which is made up of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, the Sleep Research Society, the Society for Research on Biological Diseases, the National Sleep Foundation and Stave Standard Time. The American Academy of Neurology also has endorsed it, the American Thoracic Society, the American Medical Association, other teachers groups like the Parent Teacher Association has endorsed it. Some religious groups have endorsed permanent standard time because of the way it affects prayer times. So there's a lot of support for permanent standard time, and we hope you will consider this bill.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Is this going to subcommittee, Madam Chair?
I'm not sure. I don't, not entirely, not sure it needs subcommittee, but thank you.
Have to wait till it gets into the next time before you get.
Exactly. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on House Bill 1075?
Forgot to say something.
Yes, Mr. Alciere.
One need to debunk the idea that the argument that the people are more habituated to daylight saving time. First of all, if we're habituated to daylight saving time, when are we going to break that bad habit, if not now? And secondly, the only reason that we're habituated toward daylight saving time is because we've been forced to. If you're told to bring your kids to school by 7:30, they better get there by 6:30 when they're pretending it's 7:30, or you're going to get in trouble. That's what daylight saving time is. It's pretending it's an hour later than it really is. And if you have to be in court by 9 a.m., you better be there at 8 a.m. when they're pretending it's 9 a.m., or you're going to jail. So it's only because we've been forced to be habituated to daylight saving time that I'm just finished with that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on House Bill 1075? All right, not seeing anybody, I'm going to close the hearing and open the hearing on House Bill 1679 and call Representative Yokela.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name, for the record, is Representative Josh Yokela from Fremont, Danville, and Brentwood. And I'm here today to introduce HB 1679 relative to changing to Atlantic time. You, in my 5 years in this legislature, I've brought this bill multiple times, and much of the stuff I've talked about the changing of the times has already been said about its detrimental effects. However, in the last hearing and in years prior, so I did not print out the voluminous documentation on that. So it seems like today there's two different approaches. Both are in agreement that switching the times are not beneficial, both health-wise, economic-wise, for a host of reasons. And this method of changing to Atlantic Standard Time is the preferred method by many people, by their advocacy for dislike for super early sunsets and getting off of work essentially in the dark. And I would point you to the 2017 Special Commission on the Commonwealth's time zone that I had previously given in years past to this committee, but can be found online, that talks about this issue and the benefits of it in relation to the Northeast. And I bring this, and I am in agreement, obviously, that the Senate at the federal level, I'm happy what they did as far as passing a bill that would have allowed daylight savings time all year round. Senate Bill 1623 in 2022 in Congress, but that bill was failed in the House. It wasn't acted upon. And so there is still an effort in the Northeast by many of the states ongoing to move to daylight savings time or all year round or Atlantic's time zone. There is no other state considering doing standard time all year round in the Northeast. New Hampshire, Massachusetts currently has a bill 3050 that is doing Atlantic time zone all year round. Connecticut is proposing a bill for Atlantic time zone all year round. Vermont is proposing daylight savings time all year round. And New York is proposing daylight savings time all year round. Those all have the same net effect of being on the exact same time, and it's not the Eastern Standard Time Zone. And so if you were to be trying to go with the rest of the states in the region, they have unanimously decided that doing either daylight savings time all year round, if the federal government allows that, or requesting to move to Atlantic time zone from the Secretary of Transportation, those are the methods that the states have been promulgating in the legislature currently. And so my bill this time is a little bit more complicated than in years past. And one of the reasons for that is the piece of paper that I passed around is the document from the Department of Transportation, the U.S. Department of Transportation, on kind of how they decide whether or not you're allowed to move to a different time zone or not. And some of the things that they require is information about where do businesses get their supplies and where do they ship their goods and products, and even the media broadcasts where those come from. And so the bill as introduced would essentially have a commission of all those states that agree, come together, form together, and compile that information and submit that to the Secretary of Transportation, so that it's a unified message, so that we can get approved for the moving of the time zone. So that is why the bill is a little bit longer than before. Other states just say we're just going to move, or once the other states adopt it. But in fact, you have to request that information from that change from the Secretary of Transportation, and this bill helps you prepare the information to go to there so that it can get approved. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Representative Bailey.
Years ago, many years ago, I guess, my company sent me to California for a month.
Sorry.
And all the TV shows we traditionally thought of as evening TV shows
Right.
were all on in the late afternoon.
Mhm.
I guess that was their kowtowing to New York, maybe, or the East Coast, because they were all the evening shows, but late afternoon. Do we give a damn what Massachusetts and Maine think? Let's just do it.
Thank you for the question. From California's perspective, I'm sure they consider them afternoon shows, and that you're just watching them at the wrong time. But I do think that I do agree that it would be beneficial to move. However, there is significant economic ties between New Hampshire and Massachusetts and Maine, and so for the people that live in New Hampshire and work in those states, I think it's a little bit different than the Arizona example, where most that isn't really big cities right on the border that would be majorly affected, as much as essentially a significant portion of our population going across state lines for work and stuff like that. So I do agree that there is some benefit of going as a group, but I'm not opposed to just going on our own. But I don't work in Massachusetts, so I wouldn't be negatively affected like some other people. So
Can I follow up?
Would we then say that New Hampshire is the tail being wagged by the dog?
I'm not sure how to respond to that. So I will.
Thank you.
Never mind.
Thank you.
Right, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on some of the handouts and some of the testimony already, it is said that your circadian rhythm doesn't change, if I'm understanding it correctly, and there's a certain time frame that's better for that. So let's say you move to California, your circadian rhythm stays the way it was as a New Hampshire native, and how does that relate? So being that question, if we change the time zone here and someone moves, how does that help them, or how does it not help them?
Thank you for the
If
question.
that makes the slightest bit of sense.
Thank you for the question, but as someone that was born in California and I moved here, I do think the circadian rhythm is based on the sunlight, and so you have different sunlight here, and so you're over a certain amount of time of living in New Hampshire, your circadian rhythm would reflect the sunlight that you're getting here. You're no longer getting the sunlight in California, right? So your circadian rhythm would slowly over time shift to reflect that new place that you're living. And so that is kind of what a lot of people talk about is like jet lag and stuff like that. Is your circadian rhythm kind of adjusting again to that other time zone? So I think that hopefully that answers your question.
That's thank you.
Other questions? All right, I don't see any other questions. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on House Bill 1679? Yes.
I just do want to clarify.
Please.
I do just want to clarify where the bills stand. There are both permanent daylight savings time, which are couched as Atlantic Standard Time. The reason they're doing that is they're trying to get around the federal prohibition against daylight savings time by changing the time zone rather than changing to the whether you're on standard time or daylight savings time. But there are bills in Massachusetts, in Vermont, and in New Hampshire for both directions right now. Last year, they haven't been reintroduced in 2024. There were Connecticut bills. So there are a lot of bills in our area. Maine currently has a study that is studying it. So there's a lot of active bills, and they're equally as much for standard time. In Massachusetts, we actually have more sponsors for the standard time bill than the daylight savings time bill. In the federal government, they tried to sneak the bill past the how they brought up for an emergency vote, sort of last minute vote. And it did pass the Senate, but was not taken up by the House. There was actually less sponsors that signed on for the 2023 version of the bill than the 2022 version of the bill. So we are seeing the movement towards more and more standard time bills, less support for daylight savings time bills. Last year, no daylight savings time bills passed any states for the first time in a few years because of the increasing education that it is less aligned with our natural body. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, I'm closing the hearing on House Bill 1679.